Breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ. According to multiple reports, UCF is hiring Gus Malzahn as their next head football coach. Malzahn would replace Josh Heupel, who left the program to join former UCF athletics director Danny White at Tennessee. Malzahn comes over from Auburn, where he was surprisingly fired at the end of last season. The Tigers opting to buy out the remainder of his $20 million contract. Malzahn has a familiar boss at UCF. New AD Terry Mohajir hired Malzahn in his first year at ASU, the lone year Malzahn coached with the Red Wolves. His best season at Auburn was in 2013 when the team went 12-2. They lost to Florida State in the BCS championship game, the final BCS championship game as it turned out. In his 8 years at Auburn, Malzahn coached the Tigers to a 68-35 record with a 39-27 mark in SEC play. In addition to his BCS championship appearance, he also led Auburn to 10 wins and the SEC championship game in 2017, losing to Georgia. He also lost the Peach Bowl that same year in 2017 to UCF. And for more on this, let's now welcome in CBS Sports senior college football writer Dennis Dodd. Dennis, another athletic director hiring someone he knows versus someone he doesn't. So let's get your reaction to the hiring of Gus Malzahn.
Yeah, Jeremy, I'm having a hard time finding anything wrong with this hire. In fact, you can make the case that this is the best hire for a group of 5 schools since we started calling them a group of 5 about 10 years ago. You can talk about Lane Kiffin. I guess you can talk about Butch Davis. They had championship pedigree in their background, but no other coach beat Nick Saban 3 times, is dropping down a level, quote unquote, comes cheap, cheap, cheap because he's got that buyout that is going to be offset on his salary with UCF. And is a very good coach. The worst thing you can say about Gus Malzahn maybe is he doesn't develop quarterbacks. That's going to be a lot easier at UCF instead of trying to compete against LSU and Alabama and Texas A&M. So, yeah, a championship coach who has won a national championship in 2010 as an offensive coordinator, played for one in 2013, and just couldn't get out from under that shadow of Auburn of not being good enough, but is, to my knowledge, the only coach walking the earth who is active, who has beaten Nick Saban 3 times.
Yeah, the firing at Auburn was a bit surprising for many. Tigers ending up 6-4 on the season. Not a Power 5 job, as you mentioned, but it certainly has the potential to get you noticed when you're at UCF, given what they've been able to do. What kind of redemption opportunity does this present for Malzahn?
Well, huge. In the last 5 years, UCF has probably been the best program. Cincinnati in the last 2 years has been the best program in that conference in the American. But take the last 5, going back to Josh Heupel and Scott Frost. It's been the best. It's been the best program in that league, which is the best group of 5 conference closest to the Power 5. He's got a built-in quarterback in Dylan Gabriel, so he's got a fire starter ready to run that offense. They've got an adoring city there. Orlando loves the Knights. The media's in love with them. 6-4 last year for Auburn wasn't terrible given COVID and everything else. They could have easily given him a pass and brought him back. Bo Nix maybe hasn't developed in his second year the way people have wanted, but it's only 2 years. And Bo Nix with Brian Harsin, I think, is ready to take off. But this is a new start. I don't think there's any downside. Gus Malzahn, I think, kills it at UCF, and then maybe has his a booster back to the Power 5. But right now, this was his roots. He was at Arkansas State. This is where he got going and got his boost up to Power 5.
And when you look at UCF in terms of this program, I mean, they've been steadily regressing since that 13-0 season. So when you look at this team as a whole, this program as a whole, what's Malzahn's first order of business to try to stop that slide and get them back to possibly competing at the national championship level?
Yeah, I think to tap in defensively to some of those Florida players. UCF was always known for winning shootouts, and they obviously had great offenses and great quarterbacks. Mackenzie Milton now is at Florida State. He finished in the top 10 for the Heisman 3 years ago. So they've had great offensive production. I think what Gus brings, and this sounds weird from an offensive coach, he will put that emphasis on playing enough defense down there and tapping into those Florida players. Cincinnati now, as I mentioned, is now the dominant program in that conference because they're getting players from Ohio. Memphis has had their run too, 2 straight years in the championship game. So I think recruiting, and there's nothing to be said, negative about Gus's recruiting when you're going against Alabama head-to-head 24/7, 365. I think he's done a hell of a job. I mean, when he got fired, Jeremy, I said this again. There are not many people that could do what he's done. I know he gets a lot of criticism at Auburn, but going against Nick Saban in the prime of Alabama's history, look what he's done. Won a couple of SEC titles and has a championship on his resume and played for one in the last BCS title game.
And as you mentioned, at Florida, not a bad place to recruit people who know how to play football. He is CBS Sports senior college football writer Dennis Dodd reacting to the news. According to multiple reports, Gus Malzahn becoming the head coach at UCF. And of course, they're going to talk about this on the Cover 3 podcast and how this hiring will not only affect UCF, but the Group of 5. You heard Dennis say it's quite possibly the best coaching hire in Group of 5 history since it's been called that. And they'll be talking about that on the Cover 3. You can download and subscribe wherever you get your preferred audio. We're going to take a quick 1-minute break, but when we come back, we'll get Barrett Sallee's take on what this means for the Knights.
With that breaking news, let's bring in Barrett Sallee. Barrett, how should we view this hiring? Gus Malzahn and UCF, the marriage that's about to embark here.
Yeah, it's just a tremendous hire for UCF. I mean, Gus Malzahn, obviously an established head coach. He led Auburn to some great season, won a national championship as its offensive coordinator in 2010. And I think his offense fits what UCF needs to do to get back atop the Group of 5. And I know Auburn fans, rightfully so, got frustrated with how that offense just kind of stalled out. They could not do anything different. Gus Malzahn maybe a little stubborn in his play calling, but I think from what I've been told this offseason, Gus Malzahn recognized what his problems were at Auburn and is absolutely ready to evolve. And then you look at UCF. With what they do successfully, they've had a mobile quarterback. Gus Malzahn's best seasons at Auburn, both as a head coach and as an offensive coordinator, with a mobile quarterback. Cam Newton in 2010 and Nick Marshall in 2013 and 2014. You put him in South Florida, Central Florida, to recruit. You can pick any mobile quarterback in the world. There are plenty there. And so UCF has the ability to out-athlete other programs in the AAC. Gus didn't have that luxury at Auburn, and now Gus goes to UCF where he can take that athletic ability that you find in that recruiting base and really put together what he was known for before, and that is a pure zone read offense. So it's a great hire for UCF. Gus Malzahn will get the Knights back to a New Year's 6 bowl game. I have absolutely no doubt about this, and it's kind of ironic. Tennessee hires Josh Heupel away from UCF, and UCF still comes in the better end of the deal.
Yeah, it's interesting when you take a look at it, and of course, we'll revisit that in due time. Back to Gus Malzahn, Barrett. Can you take me back to mid-December? What was it, the 13th, when he got fired right there? What were your thoughts about where he was at the end of his Auburn tenure and what was ahead of him coaching, whether it be somewhere, and come to find out it's going to be UCF?
Yeah, it was time at Auburn. I don't think anybody around the SEC was shocked at all. I think when you look at what Gus Malzahn was, he was unable to develop quarterbacks. He did not develop Bo Nix in year 2. He always lost games that were completely inexplicable, like that South Carolina game earlier in the 2020 season. He got blown out by Alabama on the road again. So while, yes, the 3 wins over Nick Saban are great, and no one else in college football can boast that, I think there were a lot of other elements to Gus Malzahn, especially the fact that he could never get over the Georgia hump. Those were problems that were consistent problems that Auburn folks just were not going to get over, and nor they should have gotten over, because, yeah, beating Alabama is great, but if you beat Alabama, you should win national championships, and Gus wasn't doing that. And so not surprising at all. Personally, for me, I thought Gus Malzahn would take a year or 2 off, do some TV. He's really insightful when he does TV. When you sort of get him out of his robotic football zone, he's an incredible analyst. So I thought he would do that for a year or 2. But I remember talking to Gus a few years ago, and he more or less said he doesn't know anything else. He doesn't know anything else. He doesn't know what to do other than coach. So after a month and a half, 2 months, not terribly surprising that football itch happens again. But had UCF not opened, I do believe he would have taken a year off, possibly even 2 years off. But I think he recognizes now that he can do a lot of great things at the Group of 5 level. And hey, you know what? Maybe he's just one of the best Group of 5 coaches now. Maybe that's his role in his coaching life, and that's okay, especially at a place like UCF where you can win big.
That's interesting. You exactly went where I was going to follow up before we let you go. Like, if all things go well, you mentioned he goes through and takes them back to an NY6 bowl and the not. How long do you anticipate this relationship to last if everything goes according as planned?
Well, I think it could last forever, but I think that depends on which jobs open up, how successful he is in Orlando, and which ADs move on to other jobs at the Power 5 level who are comfortable with Malzahn. And so I wouldn't be surprised at all if this is a marriage that lasts until Gus Malzahn wants to retire. But it does depend on what the fit is at other Group of 5 Power 5 jobs. He's not going to jump to a random Power 5 job that he can't be successful with. There's no doubt in my mind. He wants to win, and he understands that he can win successfully recruiting in Central and South Florida. So I think UCF, they didn't get a short timer. They got a long-term solution as long as the best of the best Power 5 coaches jobs don't open up. And even if that does happen, I think it still remains to be seen how attractive he would be to those jobs, knowing that sometimes they just wouldn't be good fits for guys who run offenses like Gus.
Barrett Sallee there with the breaking news. Gus Malzahn headed to UCF. Barrett, certainly appreciate it. Thanks for the insight as always. And again, just a reminder to catch the Cover 3 podcast. The guys will be talking about this, of course, getting you ready and what UCF now has to do, what happens in recruiting, all the what to spring ball, fall camp, and another college football season. Download and subscribe today.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.